Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Item 1, resumption of debate on the motion of thanks.
The question is that the following address in reply to the speech of the President be agreed to. We, the Parliament of the Republic of Singapore, express our thanks to the President for the speech which she delivered on behalf of the government at the opening of the second session of this Parliament. Associate Professor Fatimah Lateef.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We must tackle inequality vigorously, the words from the President's speech. Let me share my views on gender equality. In Singapore today, women and men are a little more equal than in some other countries and more than we used to be. In the latest Human Development Report by the United Nations, we ranked 11th out of 159 in 2016. Our Gender Inequality Index, or the GII, in 2016 was 0.068. The smaller the number, the more equal we are. That puts us as the top Asian nation for gender equality. Our Global Gender Gap Report showed that we need some nudging along in two areas. In particular, firstly, political empowerment, and secondly, representation at professional and managerial levels. I would say we are inching along gradually. Firstly, women representation only exceeded 10% of companies and board directorship, according to a study by the Diversity Action Committee on the top 100 largest primary listed companies in Singapore. Secondly, there continues to be a persistent gender wage gap, though this may be closing up very gradually as well. And thirdly, female company directors of SGX-listed companies earn 43 to 45% less than their male counterparts, according to one NUS Business School study. If gender equality is the goal, then I say gender mainstreaming is the strategy for us. Closing up the gender gap is really a journey that is happening and must continue to happen with the development and transformation of Singapore itself. It is also linked to our continued growth. Gender mainstreaming is the push for meaningful inclusiveness of women in all areas, in every area, every sector, every arena. Formal structures must be in place. Gender mainstreaming entails bringing the perceptions, experiences, knowledge, and interests of women, as well as men, to bear on policies, policy making, planning, and decision making. It must not be an added on just to please or a by the way kind of thing. How gender perspectives can be identified remain at the core. Now, it is not uncommon for us to hear women, women's group, and even men sometimes pushing for gender equality. But let us consider the following points. Firstly, our focus must be on our people, both men and women. It is critical as a prerequisite, I feel, when the focus is primarily technical or technological, people, both men and women, will not be adequately considered and is challenging to include a gender perspective. Secondly, consider this. Even if we reach the 50-50 mark for gender representation between men and women, are we women and men going to be happier, more comfortable, well adjusted in our jobs and our lives and feel the fulfillment that we so desire? Will our work be done when we reach this ratio? Will our journey end? Will it stop there? Will our fight be completed? Indeed, success to men and women have different definitions and connotations. So let's be realistic and practical when handling the topic of gender equality. Also, are enough women pushing the envelope and coming forth? Where are the women at times when we call for them? And sometimes it can be challenging to get the numbers, especially in some areas, some disciplines, and you'll have to agree with me on that. Perhaps we need a new, innovative way to engage and bring women forwards. Perhaps mainstreaming techniques need a review with fresh eyes. Men or women, they must be of the right mindset to contribute and be a part of it all, a part of nation building and a part of Singapore. This is also because each person, each woman has her own issues, considerations, priorities, work-life balance, family commitments, expectations, concerns about publicity, public scrutiny, and other interests. Mr. Speaker, I am all for greater women representation. As the fairer sex, let's also ask ourselves, are we hungry enough, or are we just pushing for the sake of pushing? In pushing for gender equality, clarity, practicality and awareness of all the factors and confounding issues must be seriously considered for a balanced approach with appropriateness. Now, on our healthcare model, consider scenario 1. An elderly lady, aged 78, had a fall at home. The family called the emergency ambulance services. She was sent to an acute care hospital and she sustained fractures in her hip region. She experienced a lot of pain, and therefore movement was not possible, neither was ambulation. She was hospitalized under an orthopedic surgeon who became her primary doctor. In the ward, she was referred to the physiotherapist for rehabilitation and exercises. She was also referred to the pain specialist for pain control, as oral medications were not sufficient, and to an endocrinologist who was called in to help with her diabetes mellitus management, as her sugars were always high. The medical officer also called the dietitian to review her and talk to her family about her food intake and regulation to help with the sugar control. At admission, a blood test was done and it showed that she had renal impairment, so a renal physician was also called in to help. A nurse in the ward, while giving instructions, noted that her responses were slow and she kept forgetting. So she highlighted this to the medical officer, who then felt a psychiatric consult was necessary. The psychiatrist came to see her, and then he said that a geriatrician consultation will be appropriate because she had signs of dementia. And after many, many consultations and a week in hospital, she's still there, and yet there was still no outcome as to when she would be going home. The family was concerned about the medical cost and the bills, and they were told to approach the business office to discuss this. Now let's move on to scenario 2. A 78-year-old lady sustained a fall at home and landed on her back. Her neighbors heard her and they called the neighborhood family physician, who came and visited her at home and discovered the tenderness in the hip. She was prescribed analgesia and the family physician called her daughter, who was at work, to update on her condition. He explained that he will be taking her down to the family medicine center across the road from her block to have her x-rays done, and in the meantime he had also activated the physiotherapist and the care coordinator from the FMC to visit her at home and help with some exercises. The neighbors activated their community befrienders network, and several ladies came down to help her out with her meals, her household chores and administration of her prescribed medication, and they kept her daughter informed and updated as she couldn't leave work. Now, what will it take for us to move from a model of care in scenario 1 to that of scenario 2? Scenario 1 is a hospital-based, hospital-centric, multidisciplinary model. It is also traditionally very physician-centric. Now, scenario 2 is a more community-based model, which is patient-centric, in alignment with the motion that patients should always be at the heart of all that we do and in our care delivery. Are we ready to challenge the status quo and ensure healthcare affordability for our population in the longer term? Which model will be able to meet our needs and the expectations of our population? Importantly, we have to review which model is economically sustainable in the medium to long term, especially with our rapidly aging population. In my view, the considerations that need to be taken into account in coming to that decision include the disease prevalence and burden in Singapore or in a certain country, the existing healthcare model and system that we have, the ratio of healthcare providers to healthcare consumers or the population, the cost of healthcare and healthcare funding, the current and projected healthcare demands as well as needs, and our perception of our healthcare providers, such as family physicians, primary care physicians versus our specialists in tertiary hospitals. Now, sir, in our community-based care model, it must be evidence-based. It must have platforms for efficient knowledge sharing, maintaining confidentiality, of course, and our NEHR is a good basic start to this. It must also have a means of educating and influencing mindsets of our population so that we can change their behavior about healthcare choices. Only with this can we have the connectivity and decentralization of a community-based model of care as in scenario 2. It will require care teams with credibility and the required training, reputable and strong institutional backing and support, such as from our academic medical centers, which are already in existence, a strong sense of ties interprofessionally, and efficient implementation, responsiveness, and of course always a degree of flexibility. Scenario 2 must be made of interdependent individuals and groups united by a shared goal, with practical vertical as well as horizontal integration. This is a critical consideration for all of us, both healthcare providers and healthcare consumers in Singapore. It is a decision we must make together and accept together. Mr. Speaker, in Malay, masyarakat Melayu Islam Singapura terus berganjak ke hadapan, kini lebih progresif dengan lebih ramai profesional, lebih ramai pelajar berkelulusan universiti dan postsiswaza. Lebih banyak kejayaan dan kecemerlangan juga diraih belia-belia kita, usahawan serta pekerja-pekerja kita. Ini semua berlaku dalam wadah masyarakat kita yang unik dalam negara majmuk Singapura, berbilang kaum yang berinteraksi dan berintegrasi bersama dan juga memerlukan kita mempunyai minda yang terbuka dan hati yang besar. Nilai-nilai ini diterap dalam anak-anak kita sejak dari kecil lagi, di mana mereka diajar konsep meritokrasi. Mereka mahu duduk sama rendah, berdiri sama tinggi dengan kaum lain dan masyarakat lain dan bersaing dalam isu-isu yang sama. Menuju ke hadapan, ada beberapa lagi cabaran-cabaran yang ketara yang ingin saya berkongsi. Pertama, peningkatan kesedaran keagamaan, the increased religiosity. Ini terjadi bukan sahaja berkenaan dengan ISIS tetapi juga aspek-aspek Islam yang lain. Ini juga terjadi dalam agama-agama lain dan merupakan suatu trend global. Ada setengah sektor berpendapat bahawa ia disebabkan perubahan masa, imigrasi dan tersebarnya fahaman dan ideologi-ideologi. Di sini, keluarga-keluarga Melayu Islam kita memainkan peranan yang kritikal memupuk fahaman yang betul di kalangan anak-anak mereka, memastikan pelajaran agama dari sektor-sektor yang betul dan asatizah yang bertauliah dan diiktiraf oleh MUIS. Isu ini penting. Fahaman yang betul juga penting. Sebab kalau prinsip-prinsip salah dan serong berkeleluasan, keharmonian dan integrasi masyarakat yang kita bina bertahun-tahun lamanya boleh mulai tergugat. Radikalisme dan ekstremisme merupakan duri dalam daging masyarakat. Yang kedua, transformasi teknologi dan digital. Ini merupakan ombak yang melanda kita semua dan kita harus membuka minda mengikuti perjalanan masa. Pelajar-pelajar, pekerja-pekerja baru dan perintis kita, guru-guru, asatizah, organisasi-organisasi Melayu Islam mesti berenang bersama arus negara bijak serta inisiatif-inisiatif yang dihamparkan. Jangan biarkan diri kita ketinggalan. Rebutlah peluang-peluang yang ada dan sedia ada. Yang ketiga, lebih penglibatan dalam arena penyelidikan atau research, eksperimentasi, matematik serta berbagai aspek sains. Memang ada yang telah menjelajahi bidang-bidang ini, tetapi nombornya masih segelintir sahaja. Peningkatan dalam arena-arena ini akan memperkukuhkan lagi posisi masyarakat Melayu Islam kita yang strategik dalam negara. Yang keempat, fahaman tentang undang-undang, that is a deeper understanding on legal matters, legal rights and the law. Ramai yang tersalah langkah dan terpesong disebabkan tidak ambil tahu tentang aspek-aspek ini. Jadi, menuju ke hadapan, kita harus memperkukuhkan pelajaran dan sesi-sesi dialog masyarakat dalam topik-topik ini. Mahupun Singapura, suatu pusat arbitration dan undang-undang antarabangsa, masyarakat kita mesti meningkatkan diri mereka dalam aspek-aspek ini untuk mendalami lagi fahaman mereka tentang topik ini. Ini penting untuk menjaga hak-hak dan keprihatinan mereka bersama. Yang kelima, pembelajaran sepanjang hayat amatlah penting sekali. Di sini saya berpendapat bahawa masyarakat kita masih ketinggalan dan harus lebih proaktif. Nombor yang mengikuti kursus-kursus peningkatan masih kecil. Skills future misalnya dan lain-lain masih lembab. Ya. Jadi marilah kita bersama-sama membuat muhasabah diri, membuka minda dan bertekad terus belajar tanpa jemu-jemu. Sebelum berakhir, Puan Speaker, saya ingin menjawab soalan Encik Faizal Manap yang bertanya tentang muhasabah diri kita dan juga langkah-langkah kita. Adakah langkah-langkah yang berani? Saya menjawab soalannya ini dengan serangkap pantun. Mahu berani biar bernas. Berani biar ada konteksnya. Jangan ubah sekadar ubah. Biar ubah berpada-pada. So I support the motion.